I'm coming to the end of my running to-do list now, so I'm going to try to just handle these and wrap up this arc now. I'm going to start by tackling the wrapper script. The goal of this particular script is that sometimes I'm just going to want to issue a single BLD command from the command line. And the way it's set up right now, the BLD commands are functions that get sourced into another shell script. So I would have to write a whole new workflow script just for this one-off that I want to do whenever that sort of situation comes up. So instead, to handle that situation, I'm going to write this wrapper script that can just dispatch to all the BLD commands. It'll be a little more verbose than you sourcing the BLD core and then calling the commands directly, but it gives me that path for using the commands from the command line very, easily without having to overthink anything. So this shouldn't get too complicated. That's basically all there is to describe to it. So let's jump in. Before I get on to fixing up the clang build and the other build configurations that are broken, I want to take a moment to properly wrap up my iteration on this build script. The version I'm copying from had some nice usage notes at the top to introduce a new user to how to use it, and that's something I'd like to keep doing in future iterations so I don't start degrading certain aspects of the system as I iterate on it. And I also want to leave a few notes about what I found during this iteration. I experimented with some new approaches to things, and there were a couple of critical issues that I think were, not good enough along the way about the thing I tried. So I want to leave some notes about what was broken and ideas I have about what to do in the next iteration to fix that, and other small things that I've got ideas for before I leave this and possibly forget the next time an iteration comes up. So that's what I'm doing here. Here I'm taking a look at the clang build and the release build configurations to figure out why they're busted. It's time to take a moment to summarize what came out of this arc. For one thing, we've got a more organized build system now, and it can help us organize multiple compilers, operating systems, and architectures. It can help us build multiple workflows. It sort of multiplexes all of these different combinations of things we might want to do over time. It's also written in Bash so that it will run almost anywhere, and it won't force an extra install. We won't have to install a Bash interpreter, since usually we can find a Bash interpreter on whatever system we might be on these days. Unlike other aspects of this code base, this particular script was something that we inherited from a previous iteration, so it didn't start from scratch. We sort of followed it along from a previous existing version of it, and it's meant to be reusable in multiple contexts. So what we really did wasn't so much extending the code base this time, rather it was working on an iteration of this reusable thing, and we ended up putting a copy of the reusable thing into our code base. But this isn't going to like sort of randomly change with our code base all the time. It's sort of more of an isolated thing that it might get copied into other code bases. Iterations might happen in other code bases that then get pulled into this one when upgraded. So we kind of have a copy of a library that exists in multiple places, and we did one iteration of it in place right now. But it's kind of more of an inherited thing than an actual piece of the code base the way most of it is. It's more isolated intentionally. In this iteration, the biggest thing we tried to look at here was how the system gets invoked. In past versions, the one we were inheriting from when we started, the way it worked was that there was a script call for every command invocation. If you want to compile something, you invoke a script. If you want to link something, you invoke a script, and so on. This time, the idea was to use the source command of Bash, which hadn't been used in the system before. And what that let us do is to set it up so that the core functions could all get sourced into a workflow script in one parse. All of the functions are just there. They're loaded in, they're parsed, they're ready to go. And then each command invocation was just calling one of those already loaded functions. While it did shrink down the usage code and probably is faster, even though we didn't profile it, it did also create some new wrinkles, some new issues that made things a little more complicated, and we didn't take the time to fully fix all of that. So for future iterations, that's something that might get fixed. Now, are we going to do those future iterations in this code base and inside of the YouTube videos, or are we going to inherit it from future iterations that happen in other contexts when we just do an in-place upgrade of our system? I'm not sure. So I don't know how we'll end up fixing those things or when that will come up. But for now, we have something that works for this code base, and I'm ready to move on. So that's where we're at. Thanks for watching.